Imagine a world so powerful that it spanned 3 continents, a place where laws, culture, and armies extended from the misty hills of Britain to the golden sands of Egypt. That world was the Roman Republic. For centuries, it was the shining example of order, stability, and shared government. Its roads connected civilizations. Its armies conquered nations. Its ideas shaped history. But beneath that grand surface, something was cracking. Not because of invading enemies, not because of a natural disaster, but because of its own people. Rome, the eternal city, was tearing itself apart. Brother against brother, senator against senator, friend against friend. The blood that soaked the streets wasn't from foreign invaders. It came from Rome's greatest sons. This is the story of the Roman civil wars. 2 decades of brutal conflict between generals, politicians, and rivals, each claiming to fight for Rome's future. But in the end, their battles would bring down a system that had stood for nearly 500 years. What rose from its ashes wasn't a republic, but an empire. This isn't just the story of Caesar, Brutus, Antony, and Augustus. It's the story of ambition, betrayal, power, and how one decision at a quiet riverbank changed the world forever. To understand how Rome fell into civil war, we need to understand what it was. For centuries, Rome had been a republic, a state governed by elected officials. The Senate was the heart of this system, led by wealthy aristocrats who debated laws and commanded armies. 2 consuls were elected every year to lead the government. It wasn't a perfect system, corruption was common, but it kept power balanced. At least it used to. By the 1st century BC, Rome's republic was in deep trouble. The gap between the rich and poor had become enormous. Landowners grabbed land from small farmers. Soldiers returned home from foreign wars only to find themselves homeless. Political violence was increasing. Street gangs fought on behalf of rival politicians. Assassinations were becoming normal. Meanwhile, the Senate, once the center of Roman democracy, had become a battleground of greed and ego. Into this chaos stepped 3 of Rome's most ambitious men: Julius Caesar, a rising general with popular support and dreams of greatness; Pompey the Great, a brilliant commander and hero of many campaigns; Crassus, the richest man in Rome, a master of influence and bribes. Together, they formed an alliance behind closed doors, an unofficial group that came to be known as the First Triumvirate. Each man wanted something: military commands, political office, wealth. By supporting each other, they bypassed the Senate's checks and balances. But in Rome, no alliance could last forever. Julius Caesar had a gift for politics and war. After his term as consul in 59 BC, he was appointed governor of Gaul, modern-day France. There, Caesar proved he was more than a politician. Over the next 8 years, he waged a brutal campaign that extended Roman territory and brought him enormous wealth. His victories against the fierce Gallic tribes made him a hero to the common people. But perhaps more dangerously, Caesar built something else: an army loyal to him personally, not to the Senate. Meanwhile, tensions back in Rome were boiling over. Crassus died in a failed campaign in the east. Pompey began to see Caesar as a threat, and the Senate, fearing Caesar's rising power, ordered him to return to Rome without his army. They wanted to strip him of his command, his influence, and his protection. Caesar faced a choice. In January 49 BC, Caesar arrived at the banks of the Rubicon River, the boundary between Gaul and Italy. Roman law forbade any general from bringing troops into Italy. If Caesar crossed that line with his army, he'd be committing treason. He paused, he thought. Then famously he said, "The die is cast," and he crossed. The Roman Republic would never be the same again. As Caesar marched south, towns opened their gates to him. Soldiers and citizens cheered him on. Pompey and the Senate, caught off guard, fled the city. Caesar entered Rome without a single drop of blood spilled. But he wasn't done. He chased Pompey across the Adriatic Sea to Greece. In 48 BC, their armies clashed at the Battle of Pharsalus. Caesar was outnumbered, but his leadership and the loyalty of his troops gave him the edge. Pompey was defeated. He fled to Egypt, hoping to rally support. But the Egyptian king, seeking Caesar's favor, had him murdered. When Caesar arrived and saw his old rival's severed head, he was disgusted. He ordered it buried with honor. The war for Rome had ended, but Caesar's story was far from over. While in Egypt, Caesar met Cleopatra, the brilliant and charismatic young queen fighting for her throne. She was ambitious, strategic, and captivating. Together, they formed a political and romantic alliance. With Caesar's help, Cleopatra secured her rule. She later gave birth to a child, Caesarion, believed to be Caesar's son. Though Caesar never publicly acknowledged the boy in Rome, the connection was powerful. After securing Egypt, Caesar returned to Rome. He was hailed as a hero. Parades, honors, and titles followed. But Caesar wanted more than just celebration, he wanted transformation. In 46 BC, Caesar was declared dictator for 10 years. In 44 BC, that title changed to dictator for life. He introduced sweeping reforms, rebuilding the calendar, settling soldiers, and reducing debt. But he also stacked the Senate with his supporters and centralized power in his hands. To many Romans, especially senators, this looked like tyranny. Rome had overthrown kings centuries earlier. They swore never to be ruled by one man again. Even Caesar's allies, men like Brutus, began to question his intentions. On March 15, 44 BC, Caesar walked into the Senate house. He was met not with applause, but with blades. Over 60 senators took part in the plot. Among them was Brutus, a man Caesar loved like a son. As the daggers fell, Caesar's last words, whether real or legend, were whispered, "Et tu, Brute." And with that, the most powerful man in Rome collapsed at the base of Pompey's statue. The tyrant was dead. The Republic was saved, or so they thought. Instead of restoring peace, Caesar's assassination threw Rome into deeper chaos. His death created a power vacuum. Three figures emerged to claim his legacy: Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal general Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, only 18 years old Lepidus, a seasoned politician and military commander. Together, they formed the Second Triumvirate in 43 BC. Their first act was brutal. The proscription lists, a state-sanctioned kill list of enemies, including the famed orator Cicero. But revenge wasn't enough. They wanted justice for Caesar's murder. Brutus and Cassius, leaders of Caesar's assassination, had fled to the east. In 42 BC, the Triumvirate marched to meet them in battle. At Philippi, two massive armies faced off. Despite initial setbacks, Antony and Octavian emerged victorious. Brutus and Cassius both died by suicide. With the assassins gone, the Triumvirate ruled Rome. But power shared his power at risk. Tensions grew between Antony and Octavian. Antony ruled the east and rekindled his romance with Cleopatra. Octavian, ruling from Rome, used this to stir public fear. He accused Antony of betraying Roman values and placing a foreign queen above his homeland. By 32 BC, war was inevitable. In 31 BC, the final confrontation arrived. The Battle of Actium, a massive naval battle off the coast of Greece. Octavian's forces, led by the brilliant general Agrippa, destroyed Antony and Cleopatra's fleet. The lovers fled to Egypt. 1 year later, surrounded and hopeless, they both committed suicide. Octavian now stood alone. In 27 BC, the Senate granted him the title Augustus, the revered one. He became Rome's first emperor. The Republic was gone. In its place stood the Roman Empire, which would last for over 4 centuries. The Roman civil wars weren't just battles. They were the unraveling of a system that had guided the Western world for centuries. They showed us how ambition, fear, betrayal, and loyalty could reshape history. They gave us legends: Caesar, Brutus, Antony, Cleopatra, Augustus. But they also gave us a warning that the collapse of a republic doesn't always come from foreign armies. Sometimes it begins with one man crossing a river and changing the world forever.